woman appeared at the edge of his property just after dawn, when the light was still gray and uncertain. She stood near the fence line, one hand gripping the post, the other clutching a small bundle wrapped in faded cloth. She didn't call out, didn't wave, just stood there waiting to be noticed. Jacob Mercer saw her from the barn. He was cinching a saddle when the shape caught his eye, too still to be a deer, too deliberate to be a trick of morning fog. He paused, one hand on the leather strap, and squinted across the 100 yards of scrub grass that separated them. She was young, maybe 25, maybe less. Her dress was the color of dust, torn at the hem and streaked with something dark, mud, or worse. Her hair hung loose, tangled by wind and time. She looked like someone who had walked a long way with nowhere left to go. Jacob didn't move right away. He'd been alone on this ranch for 3 years, ever since Sarah died and the townspeople stopped coming by with casseroles and condolences. He'd grown comfortable with silence, comfortable with the predictable rhythm of cattle and crops and the long stretch of empty horizon. A stranger showing up unannounced was a disruption, and out here, disruptions tended to cost more than they were worth. But she didn't leave. Didn't flinch. Just stood there, waiting. He walked toward her slowly, his boots crunching over brittle earth. The morning air was cold enough to sting his lungs. When he was close enough to see her face clearly, he stopped. Her eyes were gray, hollow in a way that made him think of abandoned homesteads. Her lips were cracked, her cheeks sunken. She looked like someone who hadn't eaten in days. "Help you?" Jacob asked. His voice came out rougher than he intended. She didn't answer right away. Her gaze moved past him, taking in the barn, the small house beyond it, the empty corral, calculating, measuring. Then she looked back at him. "I need work," she said. Her voice was quiet but steady. No pleading in it. No desperation. Just a statement of fact. Jacob frowned. "Work." "Yes, sir." He glanced at the bundle in her arms. It shifted slightly and he realized it wasn't cloth at all. It was a child, a baby wrapped tight and silent. "You got family?" he asked. "No, sir." "Husband?" "Dead." The word hung between them like a stone dropped into still water. Jacob shifted his weight, uncomfortable. He didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know what to say to her. "I can cook," she said, filling the silence. "I can sew, mend clothes, tend animals. I don't eat much and I don't complain." Jacob studied her. There was no softness in her expression, no attempt to charm or manipulate. She wasn't begging. She was offering a trade. "You got a name?" he asked. "Eliza." "Eliza what?" She hesitated. "Just Eliza." Jacob looked past her toward the road. It was empty. No wagon tracks. No horse. She'd come on foot, which meant she'd either been desperate or running. "Where'd you come from?" he asked. "East." "That's not an answer." Her jaw tightened. "It's the only one I've got." Jacob sighed. He knew he should turn her away. Knew he should tell her to keep walking, find a town, find a church, find someone else's problem to become. But something in her eyes stopped him. Not pity. He didn't do pity. It was something else. Something that reminded him of the way Sarah used to look at wounded animals she found in the barn. like they deserved a chance, even if the world had already decided otherwise. You can work for food, he said finally, and a place to sleep. Barn's clean. There's a cot in the back. Eliza nodded once. No smile. No relief. Just a small, barely perceptible exhale. Thank you, she said. Jacob turned and started walking back toward the house. After a moment, he heard her footsteps behind him. The first day she didn't speak unless spoken to. She worked in the kitchen while he was out checking fences, and when he came back at noon, there was stew on the stove and bread cooling on the table. It wasn't fancy, but it was the first real meal he'd had in weeks that didn't come from a tin. He ate in silence. She stood by the window, rocking the baby gently. The child hadn't made a sound since she'd arrived. Baby sick? Jacob asked, nodding. Toward the bundle, Eliza glanced down. Just quiet. That normal? For her, yes. Jacob wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. Got a name? Eliza hesitated again, the same way she had when he'd asked her name. Grace? He nodded. All right. That evening after supper, she took the baby to the barn. Jacob watched from the porch as she disappeared inside, the lantern light spilling through the cracks in the wood. He told himself it wasn't his business, told himself she'd be gone in a week, maybe less. But when he lay down that night staring at the ceiling, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, that the quiet he'd grown so comfortable with had been broken, not loudly, but irreversibly. The second day she mended his shirts. The third, she scrubbed the floors. By the end of the week, the house looked like someone lived in it again. Jacob didn't ask questions. Didn't press her for details about where she'd come from or why. He told himself it didn't matter. She worked hard. She didn't cause trouble. That was enough. But on the 8th day, when he came back from town with supplies, he found her standing in the doorway staring down the road with an expression he couldn't read. Something wrong? He asked, dismounting. She shook her head quickly. No, sir. But her hand was trembling. Jacob looked past her, toward the horizon. There was nothing there, just heat shimmer and dust. You expecting someone? He asked quietly. Eliza met his eyes. For the first time since she'd arrived, he saw fear in them. Real, unfiltered fear. No, she said. But that doesn't mean they're not coming. Jacob didn't press her that night. He unloaded the supplies in silence, stacked the flour and sugar in the pantry, hung the new axe head on its hook. Eliza moved around the kitchen like a shadow, her movements efficient but distracted. The baby, Grace, lay in a crate lined with old blankets near the stove, sleeping soundly. The only sound was the crackle of the fire and the scrape of Eliza's spoon against the pot. He sat at the table watching her. She hadn't spoken since her cryptic warning, and he wasn't sure if he should push. He'd spent 3 years avoiding other people's problems. It had been easier that way, cleaner. But something about the way she'd looked down that empty road bothered him. Eliza, he said finally. She didn't turn. Yes, sir? If someone's looking for you, I need to know. Her hand stilled on the spoon. For a long moment she didn't move. Then she set it down carefully and turned to face him. "I'm not a thief," she said quietly. "And I'm not a criminal. Didn't say you were. But you're wondering." Jacob leaned back in his chair. "I'm wondering why a woman with a baby shows up on foot with nothing but the clothes on her back. I'm wondering why she won't say where she came from. And I'm wondering why she looks like she's waiting for the devil himself to ride up that road." Eliza's jaw tightened. She crossed her arms, holding herself like she was trying to keep something fragile from breaking. "My husband," she said slowly, "was not a good man." Jacob said nothing, just waited. "He worked for a ranch east of here," she continued. "Big operation. Cattle, horses, land as far as you could see. He was a foreman, respected, feared." She paused, her eyes distant. "He had a temper. The kind that didn't show itself until it was too late to run." Jacob felt something cold settle in his chest. "When I told him I was leaving," Eliza said, her voice barely above a whisper, "he told me I'd be dead before I made it 10 miles. But you left anyway." "I had to." Her gaze dropped to the crate where Grace slept. "For her," Jacob exhaled slowly. "And now you think he's coming after you?" "I don't think. I know." Eliza looked up at him, and there was something raw in her expression. "Men like him don't let go. They don't forgive. They hunt." Jacob ran a hand over his face. This was exactly the kind of trouble he'd been trying to avoid. The kind that got people killed. The kind that brought lawmen and questions and blood. "How long's it been?" he asked. 3 weeks, maybe 4. "And he hasn't found you yet." "That doesn't mean he won't." Jacob stood and walked to the window. The night outside was dark and still. No movement, no sound. But that didn't mean anything. Out here, danger didn't announce itself with trumpets. It crept in quiet, patient, and deadly. "You should have told me," he said. "Would you have let me stay?" He didn't answer, because he didn't know. Eliza moved closer, her voice urgent now. "I can leave. Tonight. I'll take Grace and keep moving. You won't have to." "No." She stopped. Jacob turned to face her. "You leave now. You'll be dead in a week, maybe less. Winter's coming. You got no supplies, no horse, no gun." He crossed his arms. "And if this man of yours is half as dangerous as you say, he'll find you before you make it to the next town. Then what do you want me to do?" Eliza's voice cracked. "I can't put you in danger. I won't." "Too late for that," Jacob said grimly. "You're already here. Which means if he comes, he's coming here." Eliza looked away, blinking hard. "I'm sorry." Jacob sighed. He thought about Sarah. About the way she used to drag home every broken thing she found. Birds with busted wings. Dogs with limps, people with nowhere else to go. She'd always said the same thing. If we don't help, who will? He'd buried her 3 years ago. But her voice still echoed in the back of his mind. "You stay," he said finally. "But if trouble comes, you do exactly what I say. Understood?" Eliza nodded. her eyes glistening. Yes, sir. And stop calling me sir. My name's Jacob. She smiled faintly. All right, Jacob. The next morning, Jacob rode into town. He didn't tell Eliza where he went.